Welcome back to NES Revisited for Season 2. In this episode, we're going to be checking out 4 games which span from February to March 1987. Oh, and check out this TV upgrade. I found this beast on the side of the road. It's a new year, and we got tons of amazing games to check out, so let's just get started.
Kicking off the year 1987, Capcom releases Trojan. Right off the bat, you'll notice a few similarities to Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins. The map serves as a guide letting you know how far you have left in the game. Each stage will usually have a second section with a different boss fight to deal with. Playing this game without any research is a terrible idea. This game feels like Kung Fu with the non-stop enemies and the dreaded press up to jump mechanic. You get a shield, which you'll need to master in order not to take damage from everything flying your way. In the first stage, each manhole has some sort of power-up if you go inside. Now this is very important. The shoe is the super jump, which lets you jump really high. It only works for a short period of time and can only be done straight up. The flying heart fills your health. Sometimes you'll see a key, which is just used to unlock the next section. If you find an S, it will speed your walk up for a bit. The most important power-up though is the P. It doubles your attack and makes the bosses far more manageable. If you manage to find the second one, you'll breeze through the game because the power-ups stack up. Just be aware if you do die, you lose all your power-ups. Make your way through each stage and find out the best way to defeat the final bosses. The hardest boss is the Iron Arms. You have to be patient. Just duck and wait till he throws an object over your head and get in a hit. Each hit takes a ton of damage. I recommend taking your time with this one instead of trying to bombard him with jumping attacks. The first hour of playing this game, I didn't get anywhere. I found out if you hold up and hit the start button after dying, you can continue at the beginning of the stage that you died at. Without that code and without finding out the weaknesses, this game is tremendously difficult and not very fun to play as a casual gamer. You die really fast when you start making mistakes, and it's hard to experiment if every time you lose all your lives you start at the beginning of the game. The stages aren't long at all, so with the code you can just keep trying the stages until you figure out the best way to beat the sections. The best strategy really is to find the power boost in stage 1. Try to hold on to it to the end of the stage because once you beat it, you'll get full health for the next stage. I really didn't care for this game the first few tries. With the up buttons for jump and awkward shield mechanic, I was taking a ton of damage even from the easiest enemies. By figuring out a few tricks and a couple tips, it definitely made the difference. This is how games of this genre were meant to be played back in the 80s. They were always short games, but tons of difficulty for you to overcome. I went from hating this game for being too hard and awkward to speed running it in 8 minutes without dying. I'm glad I gave this game a chance, and if you like this style of game and difficulty, you will too, so check it out. Let's check out Pro Wrestling, developed by Nintendo. Wait a minute, I've definitely heard that intro before. Actually twice with baseball and tennis. Starting the game, you press left or right to cycle through 6 wrestlers, each having slightly different looks and special moves. Unfortunately, I don't have a manual for this game, and the only one I've seen posted online is missing the middle pages, so I don't know if the information is there or if you have to resort to guides. Luckily, that is not a problem today, but regardless, you can figure out the special moves with some trial and error, since they usually replace a generic move. Compared to tag team wrestling, the controls are far more user-friendly. No awkward grabs and mashing B to cycle through moves. Just hit a direction and a button and you'll do something different. You can also be thrown out of the ring as well, so the 20-second ring out applies. You can perform a run and jump splash afterwards to do some good damage. The top 2 ring poles can be used to jump on your opponent, and mashing the buttons will help you get up if you're on the mat. When you're playing the game, you can't just mash your way to victory. If you knock your opponent down, you can't immediately attack them again when you pick them up. You have to try and time a late attack or they'll attack you. Double tap a direction to begin running and then hit A or B to do a different attack. There's no energy bar, so you'll have to sense when it feels right to start pinning for a 3 count. If you're getting beat up pretty bad, you'll first hear a chime as a warning. If you're close to pinnable, you'll hear more of an alert. If you're not careful, you can get pinned at any time and lose. You start in 5th place ranking and you go up after each win. Recognize that sound? When you reach 1st place, you'll fight a title match for the VWA Championships. King Slender is the champ unless you pick him. Then Giant Panther is a VWA champ. As you play, the wrestlers become far more difficult and more evasive. You'll have to try and get ring outs or be real consistent with ring attacks to wear them out. Defend your title 10 times in a row in order to fight the VWF champ Great Puma. Lose once and you'll have to start all over again. Yeah, I did all I could do to get to the 10th defense the first time but ran out of time. So frustrating. That's pretty much it for pro wrestling. Compared to Tag Team and Muscle, this is a really playable and fun game for wrestling fans. The ring music isn't horrible, but it gets pretty old and repetitive when playing for long periods of time. Also, the characters are pretty generic and aren't really all that different, other than swapped out normal moves for unique ones. But the ring, referee, cameraman, commentators, and crowd graphics are nice touches and on par in what we'd expect from a game developed by Nintendo. Nintendo did a great job on this game. I remember borrowing this game in the late 80s and loving this game. I wasn't good at it and I didn't win much, but it was fun enough to keep playing. Had I understood the controls better or even had the instruction manual, I probably would have wanted this game permanently. If you were a fan of wrestling in 1987, this game is an easy purchase. Playing this game today has its limits. We're still early in the NES's life cycle, so the graphics alone won't be enough to want to play this game, but the game is fun and playable. I recommend giving this one a shot if you've never played it before. It might not be the best NES wrestling game, but it sure is a good standard for how wrestling games should be. Next up we have Soccer. Another Nintendo produced sports game. This one is out of place because of its inconsistent release date. Starting up the game gives you different countries to choose from along with difficulty and length of time. The first thing you should notice is how dated and plain the graphics look. There's like 10 colors max on the screen. Kicking the ball around feels like it's made of cement. Player controls are awkward and it's hard to know who you're controlling at first. Kicking a goal in this game is very frustrating and slow. Control the arrow near the goal with your movements, but unless you're completely still and nobody is around you, by the time the ball is kicked, it probably won't go in. It also doesn't seem to go where the arrow is most of the time, so you're better off just mashing the buttons and hoping the goalie is not paying attention. If you keep the power on long enough to make it to the end of the half, you can watch an entertaining halftime show. Continue on and win or lose, once the game is over you go back to the title screen. Well, this game was developed in 1985, so if you got your hands on it beforehand, chances are you didn't like it then either. If you had a Nintendo and soccer was your thing, you probably got more out of this game than anyone. For 1987, it's clearly outdated and it shows. If the ball didn't feel like a boulder moving a foot at a time and dribbling and shooting was more smooth, this would have been a decent soccer game for the time. Sure, the graphics aren't great, but the gameplay could have saved this one. Finishing up March 1987 with our third Nintendo developed game, and never too shy to reuse intro themes, we have Volley Ball. At the title screen you can choose game or training. Training is nice because it highlights which player you can move during the game, but that's about it. You can only play as USA in first player mode, and the difficulty is ranked from Russia as the hardest, China, Cuba, then Japan, and below with the Republic of Tunisia being the easiest. I'll be honest, before I started recording this game, I played 4 straight games and never scored a single point. No matter what I did, I could not spike the ball. Come to find out, you're supposed to hold the button instead of pressing it at the right moment. Good to know. Alright, before we move on, let's just take a moment and watch these animations. Fantastic. Moving on. After you get a handle of the controls, you'll be spiking consistently in no time. You can even knock the other player to the ground on occasion. Whether you pick men or women, you play the best of 5 with traditional volleyball scoring rules. After you win or lose, you just go back to the title screen, so there's no incentive to keep playing unless you've had fun playing it. There is a 2-player mode, so it has that going. Overall, the graphics aren't much better than soccer or any other NES developed game up to this point. Once you figure out how to play this game and start scoring, the game does become decent. I'm not sure this was a game people were rushing to pick up on release, but at least if you like volleyball, there was something playable for the NES. There are definitely better volleyball games available on the NES, so I'd pass on this one. It's not a terrible game, but I think we're getting to the point where we can expect more from Nintendo. Nobody wants to buy a sports game if all you can do is play one game only to head back to the title screen.
Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. In the next episode, we're going to be checking out 5 games from April to May. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode, and thanks for watching.